Hi friends, welcome back and happy 2024. We're about to jump into everything I watched in January, which was a lot of TV shows too. But before we get into it, I get asked all the time, how did you watch this movie? How did you see this film? Well, it's because of today's sponsor and my secret weapon when it comes to watching movies and TV. It's Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. Not only do they encrypt all of your data and privacy when you're surfing online, they also can unlock geo-blocked content. So say if you wanted to watch a movie that was only available on Tubi in a certain country, just flick a switch, type in a location, and you're there. I use this all the time to unlock geo-blocked content or rent movies in other countries, and it works a treat. Their prices are really reasonable. But if you're a little bit scared about trying it out, don't worry, they have a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee. So why not try out Surfshark today? And if you're not happy with it within 30 days, let them know. No questions asked, you get your money back. And bonus, you can also get an exclusive winter deal right now. If you use the code SPOOKY, you can get up to 6 additional months for free. There's also a link down in the description below. There's no better time than now to try out Surfshark and unlock more content and protect yourself while you're online. Thank you so much to Surfshark for sponsoring creators like me, and thank you for letting me watch so much content. Now let's get into everything I watched. Okay, the very first film I watched this year was Beyond Utopia. I did talk about this in a recent video. This is an insane documentary about North Korea. Sorry, starting off a little bit heavy. One of the best ones I've seen. I watch a lot of North Korean documentaries. If you didn't know, that's kind of something I'm very interested in. And this is just incredible, the way they obtain the footage. It's a story of people escaping North Korea and their family's journey, and a couple of different scenarios, which every scenario is different when it comes to this. But it's a very interesting, eye-opening, terrifying documentary, but it also breaks down the basics of North Korea and the people. So if you haven't watched any North Korean documentaries and you are interested in that, I would highly recommend checking this one out. The way it was put together is fantastic, and the way they obtained real footage of people trying to flee the country is absolutely insane. So highly recommend that. It was a great watch. I watched Night Swim, which you guys know how this turned out. I went and saw this at the cinemas, and I did a come with me review. I wanted the best for this one, as I do for every film, but it didn't quite work for me, and oh my god, look how low. I didn't like it, but people hated it. Wow, look at that, guys. It's so sad. It's like the curse of the January horror movie. I know a lot of people hate January films, but in Australia, January is the peak time we get all the films that are the Oscar nominees that come out later in Australia. We usually get them around January, and I know horror is different, but God, that's sad. This next one, Monolith. This is an Australian movie. I highly recommend to you guys. It is a kind of low-budget indie Australian horror sci-fi, and I think it will be up so many of your alleys. I think so many of you guys will love this film. I'm not too sure if it's come out on streaming services in America, but it's on Binge, I believe, in Australia. That's where I watched it. This was a movie that a lot of people were talking about how it's coming to, it's the most anticipated film of the year. And I looked it up, and it's out in my country already. So it came out last year in my country. So this I thought was really well done. It's a story of a podcast host who gets herself in hot water and is in a controversial scandal. And she turns to a conspiracy theory podcast and gets really drawn in by this story. And I don't want to ruin any of it, but it's really captivating the way it's filmed, because it's a lot of her in the room on a phone call that's very dicey, and you just hear people on the other side of the phone. It's kind of like a one location, but your mind just goes wild with it, and it has such an incredible ending, and the visual aspects of it are great. There's definitely a couple of things that took me out of it, but the idea alone I thought was really sinister and quite scary. I thought this was a really great pick, and I would highly recommend it if you guys get the chance to see it. Add it to your to-watch list. I watched Jane, which was just a random, I think this was on Prime. I saw the cast, and it's kind of bad, to be honest. Let's say it's about 3 friends who have a falling out, and one of them passes away, and then the other 2 get together and start using their friend who's passed away, their social media account. It just turns the school on its head, basically. And then you're trying to figure out who the truly evil one is. I don't know. It was very messy, very strange, and so many plot holes. So, yeah, not for me. I watched Hell Camp Teen Nightmare. It's a documentary, a Netflix documentary about a camp where people send their kids who are out of control. It was just this horrific camp that kept getting shut down anywhere it moved in America, basically, because of its treatment of these children. It has a really interesting interview because it has an interview from the point of view, if I'm remembering correctly, from the wife of the guy who made this whole thing, and her perspective and perception of it is so strange compared to everyone else. But I felt like after a while it was kind of treading the same ground. Even though this story is very interesting, it had a weird way of getting around to finally telling us what happened. So I don't think that the flow was great, but the information itself was very chilling. And if you're into true crime docos, it's a pretty fast one. It's just a whole documentary within 90 minutes, so it's not a long drawn out process. I watched Quiz Lady. This film, it's not the best film. It's very cliche, very silly, but oh my god, is it so heartfelt, and I don't know, it was like wholesome and cringe at the same time, which I really love. But Sandra Oh in this, she is so amazing. She is so amazing as this role. You have Awkwafina, you have Will Ferrell as well, Holland Taylor. It's a cute story about two opposite sisters, and they have to get themselves out of a financial situation, and one of them is obsessed with this quiz show. So I thought it was a really cute story about sisters, a little bit cringy, but the heart was in the right place. This next film we have to talk about. If you're a Patreon, I did do a Patreon come with me for this, so you know my feelings. I want to say first up, I was all for Mean Girls being a Gen Z version, this movie being a Gen Z version of the original take. That's what I thought they were going to do, because I knew it was a musical. Let me get that out. I already knew it was a musical. I know this is based on the musical. I know Renee Raps played Regina George in the musical. I know all of this, okay? So before you jump down my throat. But I honestly thought, because they said this was going to be a mix of the original, the Broadway musical, and its own thing, that they were going to change things slightly. They didn't lean fully into either way. So it became this mashup of a film that I felt like happened to me, but I didn't experience. I felt like this film was messy. It had a weird way of transitioning through the storyline that really took me out of the strong aspects of it and the inner dialogue. I think that's something that's really important about the original film is we hear Lindsay Lohan's inner dialogue the whole film. In the musical, we're meant to hear that throughout the whole, Broadway production. And we hear a strong voice about that. Half the songs were cut, and then a lot of the songs were simplified or made shorter. And I just didn't feel like I was listening to any inner dialogue, and the story, thank God I knew what the story was, because it was so confusing. I also think it didn't really work because the things that they tried to update in terms of the generations, it didn't make much sense, because the mean girls weren't mean anymore. They were passive aggressive if at best. But it wasn't that strong divide between all of the girl groups and the groups and the cliques within the school, which is what's in the original. I felt like everyone kind of blended together as like a big friend group. So when Girl World is broken, which is in the first film, it doesn't really have the same effect. There's so many things that I didn't like about this film, and I was really let down. I was so excited. I went to the premiere here in Perth. I dressed up in pink. I did a little TikTok-y. I was so excited. I was all for just having fun, and I love musicals. So that's not what I didn't like about it. And I just felt really let down, especially having an Australian as the lead. I thought the girl who played Janice was fantastic. There was definitely things I liked about it. I felt like Tina Fey gave herself all the greatest lines. But on reflection, it made sense that this was meant to be a straight to Paramount movie, which is what it initially was intended to be. And then they changed that and made it into this grand January release, and I don't know, it just didn't work for me. Yeah, I didn't like Mean Girls. I wanted to. It just didn't work for me. Anyway, moving on. Respect all opinions. Okay, I watched this documentary, which was horrendous, because I did a video about really brutal documentaries, and this was one on my list that I saw a lot of people when I was doing research talk about. I think it's like a BBC or like a straight to TV documentary about a man who was abused, and it's just a very sad, it's a very short 50 minutes, it's a very short film, very intense, about a man in his situation and his family trying to get him out. I had a really strange comment about this actually, someone saying, this isn't crazy, this happens every day. Yeah, that doesn't make it any less severe and any less important. I just want to say to that person, shout them out. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this is horrific what happened to this guy, and if you don't find it horrific, I don't know what's wrong with you. I watched Grizzly Man because a lot of people told me to watch this documentary. They said it's really disturbing. I did not find it disturbing at all. It's kind of a sad, offbeat documentary. I wouldn't say offbeat as in comedy, but offbeat just because it's definitely something different. It's about this man who is obsessed with bears, and he believes he has this kind of relationship with them, and he goes up on these like expeditions in the woods and spends time with them, and then it's about kind of who he is. It's a lot of back and forth, and it is an interesting story, don't get me wrong. But I didn't find it as effective, I think, as some people did. Some people really love that documentary. I'm glad I finally got to watch it, though. I watched Plan B, which is a little cutesy comedy with two girls who are on like a road trip where everything basically goes wrong. Well, it's not even meant to be a road trip, but they try and get Plan B for one of them, and then everything goes wrong that can go wrong, and they end up on a road trip where, you know, all that crazy shenanigans. It's kind of funny, kind of silly. It was just a nice like Sunday watch. I think I watched it on a Sunday. I had a relaxing time watching it, basically. Nothing special. I watched Locked In. This is a Netflix drama thriller that wasn't great. I had a lot of stinkers, I think. My TV shows, I think, is a little bit better, but we'll see. It has like some twists in it, but it's a very convoluted story, basically. It starts off about a nurse who's, you know, caring for this lady who has locked-in syndrome, and I think that's the right terminology. I apologize if it's not. And she's trying to figure out what happened to her. And it turns into this long, winding story about her relationship with her family who live with her in this giant mansion and all the secrets they hold. I wouldn't recommend it. After this, I watched All of Us Strangers. I know everyone's been talking about this because it just got released. I saw a media screening for this. It was absolutely beautiful and totally unexpected. This film I thought was about one thing, and then it was completely about something else. And before you ask, no, I have not seen any of his other films, and I definitely need to, and that was my plan. But after watching this, I was so emotionally drained, I just couldn't. This film is about a screenwriter who has a interaction with a man in his building, but is also dealing with complicated feelings about his parents. I don't want to say too much more because it was such a good reveal. Not knowing anything about this film really gave it magic. I've never seen a film like this, I have to say that. It was really interesting the way it was put together. The kind of subgenre of it, phenomenal. I thought it was about one thing, it turned into something else, and although some parts of it were predictable, I felt like it was done in such an interesting way that it was meant to be predictable. It was almost like you were meant to understand what was happening before the main character. So it had this amazing layered effect. And this film is going to be studied for years. It was phenomenal. And I highly, highly recommend, if you like slow burn dramas full of heart and soul, this one's for you. If you want to cry, this one's for you. If you don't watch it. Okay, from here I watched Jennifer. This was a group watch I did with some of my patrons. This was such a funny movie to watch as a group. If you've ever seen it, it kind of plays off the idea of Carrie. It's about a girl in Jennifer who is at a boarding school, and she's not like the other girls because I think she's there from a scholarship from what I remember, but she's not rich and classy like the other ladies, and her parents own a pet shop, and that's basically it. It's like a long story about her being bullied, and then a payoff. It's done in this beautiful glamour 70s kind of look. The aesthetic of it is beautiful, and the language is really interesting things they call each other. And yeah, it's just a basic bullying film, as you do. I don't think that there's too much substance to it, but it was very beautiful looking. And again, a fun one to watch with a crowd. I then watched all of the Paradise Lost films. You guys had a lot to say when I talked about this in my disturbing documentary video. I have seen them before. I had seen them before. I just wanted to refresh myself because I didn't really want to write a little blurb about what I believed it's about if I don't have it fresh in my memory, and I hadn't seen these since I was in film school. And I know you guys have very conflicting views on how the documentary is portrayed, and I totally understand and respect that, so I don't want to get into that. But it is a documentary about kids who were accused of heinous crimes, horrific crimes, and the documentaries really go into detail. They show photos. It's just insane, and basically covers all of the media coverage and all of how the America really reacted to these allegations and the boys on trial themselves. And then what's really interesting about this is the documentaries take place so far away from each other. We got 1996, 2000, and then 2011, showing the time and how things change and how people's perceptions also change, which I think is the most interesting part. There is a lot to it, and there's a lot of follow-up documentaries and a TV show as well on this if you're looking for more content. I then watched Red Rooms. I did a review on this. Loved it. Wish I got to see it last year, but it took a while for this one to come out. I used my VPN to watch it, and I was really excited because I know a lot of you saw it at film festivals last year and you just kept writing into my comments. This is a slow burn drama that really took me a while to understand the bigger picture and put together all the clues afterwards, even though it's it's very shocking. It's a slow drama about a woman who is going to watch a man on trial for, again, horrific crimes, and her connection and reasoning to why she's there. And you just kind of see it slowly unravel, but you have no idea why it's going that way until the final penny drop at the end. And I think that the way it's put together is so superb, and her character is so well written. I really enjoyed it, and it's very disturbing and shocking, but it's also just, it's a drama, so there's not a lot of visual aspects that are disturbing. It's more the idea of it, and it takes a really interesting angle as well. I watched The Color Purple. I watched this because I was going to go see the new musical. I just wanted to do a rewatch. I hadn't seen this since I was about 16. Love this movie. It's so good. Such a good, effective journey movie. I know it's really weird to simplify The Color Purple and call it a journey movie, but the roles are superb. The casting is just so well done. I bawled at the end of this movie, and I remember crying my eyes out the first time I saw it. It's a bizarre thing to say, but this film really is the story of hope through everything dark in this world. The story of two sisters who were separated. They go through abuse and assault and berated, and they lose themselves completely. And it's also the story about women helping out other women. So I don't know. It's an epic. It's an epic. And then I watched Aileen, which was a movie that came out last year for a lot of you guys, but it took a while to come to Australia, which it did through the form of VOD. And a VPN. Aileen is a strange thriller drama, and it is based on a book about a woman who works in a prison facility, and another woman comes to work there who completely changes her life. She's completely opposite. She's really outspoken, looked upon, desired by a lot of people, and her protagonist Aileen is quite meek and feels invisible. And it's about her and her perception on their relationship, I would say that. Definitely has some surprises. I thought they were, again, kind of predictable. I do think that the film is up for interpretation, a little bit ambiguous. And I talked to someone else about this, and they said that the book was not ambiguous at all. But from some quotes that I saw from Anne Hathaway, who's in this film, it's meant to be a little bit ambiguous. So it would be interesting to have that discussion and see what side you guys are on. But I was kind of let down by this one. I didn't think it was as good as I hoped it to be, with having a thriller with this kind of obsession relationship story. It wasn't really like that at all. It was completely different to that. And you know me, I like my stalker films, and I sat down and I was ready for a stalker film, and that did not deliver. So I was kind of sad. After this, I watched The Color Purple, the musical, in the cinema. I loved the actual songs, the performances, the camera work, everything. I thought it was vibrant, beautiful. The performances were so good. So good. They were casted so well, but it was just the storyline that felt like maybe it needed more time in this one. I don't know. It just didn't feel complete after, following the movie, but the movie's a big thing to follow. There was a kind of like a change to the final part of the film, the final scene, the final act was really flipped on its head. They changed a lot from the original story, but the final scene I could not get down with, and that brought it down at least a point for me, or at least a star for me, because the final scene really bugged me, really bugged me. But other than that, the performances are flawless. The music is so good, so I cannot fault to any actor. Beautiful, beautiful. The costume design was fantastic as well. I watched Rewind. This was another disturbing documentary that I talk about in my disturbing documentary video about a boy who rewinds not a boy, he's a man, and he rewinds his childhood tapes to look at the severe abuse he went through as a child and really study what actually happened. And it takes you through the different steps he went to get help, which I think is really interesting and very different to a lot of other documentaries we see about abuse and the way it's portrayed. This is a story about getting help and everyone it took and the whole process to become a survivor. So I really appreciated that documentary for that. It's very intense though. All of the hard conversations. I then watched The Dangerous Game. This was a really bad Netflix. I thought it was going to be like a cute little murder mystery crime thing, and it was kind of unwatchable, let's be real, about a man in a mansion, and all the family gets there and they're all wealthy, but they all want his money, and then murder strikes, and by the end I just could not care less who the murderer was. I just wanted them all to die. So that's my review of that. Not good. Just silly acting, silly story, cliche, awful. Okay. I then rewatched Unfriended. Big fan of this. Love in screen movies where you get to pretend like you're there in the Skype call. If you watch it on your laptop, I find them very effective. This one I think is solid. It's very intense. I forgot how intense all of the gore was and the subject matter, so definitely content warning on that, but content warning on everything I talk about, to be fair. So this really goes hard for something that I look at as a teen, like a silly teen horror movie. It's really not. It's very intense content, so I do like it for that, but the performances are pretty goofy. I guess we're all goofy. We're on a Skype call. I don't know. It's all kind of the strangeness of it all. I then watched The Iron Claw, okay? I do have a patron come with me for this one. I was sold this. I have a bone to pick with some of you guys. So many people said I should watch The Iron Claw because it's so disturbing. I found The Iron Claw to be incredibly sad. It is a film that I keep thinking about, but I don't find it to be disturbing. I didn't think it was disturbing, and I'll tell you why. It's because of the way it was portrayed. And before you say you don't know the real story, I do know the real story. I went with a wrestling fan who does commentating. Hi, Adam, if you're watching, in where I live in Perth, who's a big wrestling fan, and they said, afterwards they explained some things to me. But then I also watched the Vice documentary, The Dark Side of Wrestling, that people have been talking about. I think I have a better understanding after watching that documentary why so much was changed in this movie. So this movie at the start, it says inspired by this family story, and now I understand completely why they changed so much, because it's meant to be a story. I don't want to give away too much, but it's meant to be a story of tragedy. It made sense once I understood the bigger picture. Some of the stuff is wild that they took it out, but it definitely made sense. I see this film as just through the point of view of Zac Efron's character, and him as one of the brothers of this wrestling family, and how they navigate their fame and the downfalls of that. I see this as an anti-wrestling movie as well, but it's beautifully stylized, beautifully put together, and Zac Efron is freaking amazing. I'm a Zac Efron stan now. He's so amazing in this film. I really liked that aspect of it, but some of the movie was a little bit strange because the story was so intense and it felt so smooth and romantic. It was like glamorizing this downfall, which I think makes sense when you see it as a perspective through Zac Efron's character. So I understand it. I really do understand how they made all the choices, but I did not find this film to be disturbing. It also is listed as a thriller in some places. I did not find it thrilling. It's a sad, dramatic story that is inspired by a real family. And I just thought the way it looked and Zac Efron's performance was fantastic. But I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. Does that sum up? I know a lot of people ask me what I thought about it, so that's how I feel. I feel like I had a complicated relationship with that film, which makes sense because it's a complicated film. I then watched Trunk Locked In. This I did a review on. It is a new Amazon movie about a woman who is locked in a trunk. It's a German film about she wakes up there. You have to kind of figure out why she's there, and it's a one location film where she uses her phone and anything around her to try and get out of this situation. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good for what it was. A little bit predictable, but still a fine Sunday night watch. I then watched The Juror, The Rural Juror, if you know what I'm talking about. This is Demi Moore. Oh my God. And is it Alec Baldwin? I always forget which one it is. Yes, it's the Alec Baldwin. This is such a funny, creepy movie, kind of stalkerish if you're into that. It was such a weird movie, but I do like Demi Moore in it. She's this artist who gets on to be a juror. I feel like I'm saying that word so weird, which is normal for me, on this high profile case. But they basically start intimidating her to try and sway the outcome. It's a little cat and mouse game. Very middle of the road. I wouldn't recommend it either way, to be honest. If you like 90s thrillers, get into it. If not, you can leave it. It's a funny kind of crime one. It's very strange, to be honest, but I kind of liked that. But a lot of it is like kind of courtroom crime thriller aspects. Then I watched Hell or High Water. This one was a middle of the road again. It's about two brothers who start hitting up banks to rob them, and the sheriff in the local town, or cop, detective, I don't know what he is, who tries to hunt them down. And yeah, that's basically it. I heard that this film was meant to have a really good ending, and it didn't. The ending was the most unsatisfying part, but I actually do have a problem in this film. A lot of people love this movie. Me and my husband both had the same weird thought about this film. It's basically Jeff Bridges plays this cop who's quite racist, and openly so. He says it in the film. And his partner is Native American, and he keeps making all these jokes, and I'm thinking, okay, it must have something to do with his character, and it's going to come around and it's going to be this full circle moment. It's definitely put in for a poetic reason. No, it's not. It's just like part of his character. And I just felt it was very strange to add that in and not like make a comment on it. I don't know. That part threw me off. But then a lot of it was just them going through the motions. And I don't know, it just didn't capture me in the same way it captured everyone else, I guess. Yeah, you guys really liked this film. I'm kind of surprised. I didn't know that it was this well liked. We just randomly watched it because it was on Netflix. That's what happens sometimes though. I mean, it's actually called a neo-Western thriller drama, and that's not always my forte, but yeah, I mean, it's exactly what it says it is. Two men robbing banks. From people saying it was one of the best endings of a film they've ever seen. I didn't get that. Okay, let's talk about TV shows. I watched Gen V, which if you're a fan of The Boys, this is a spin-off series. So good. I'm a big fan of The Boys, if you didn't know, and I just absolutely loved this. I thought it was smart, creative, poetic, all the stuff I like that I was just talking about I didn't get. Basically, if you don't know, The Boys is about superheroes that live in a community or a society like we have today, and how that would affect them in terms of like marketing, popularity, social issues, everything dark about the way people are presented on the news, and anyone who's at a point of authority, all of that, and how that reflects on them, and then also them having to be awful people to get in that position of power. And the Gen V is meant to be a spin on Gen Z, because Gen V is something that you can give somebody to get superhero powers. And so we see these emerging superheroes and their struggle through, school and through peer pressure and all that kind of stuff navigating their own superpowers, and all of their powers are different, so that's why it's really interesting because they're unique. But in this one, it's so good because they're all metaphors. I don't want to ruin any of the metaphors, but they're all so clever. They're all about things like mental illness, and it's just really interesting the way that they've manifested these superhero powers, and I really enjoyed it. I just liked all of the characters. It was a good little mystery, and I very much enjoyed it. Wish there was more. Highly recommend. I then watched the part 2 of the Natalia Speaks, which if you haven't seen part 1, it's a documentary series that basically people say that it inspired The Orphan, the story of The Orphan, or vice versa. I don't know if that works, but it's about a girl who was mistreated by a family after being adopted. That's a short way to put it. It's a very long story, and they question how old she actually is. This part of the story, which is the second half of the documentary series, they speak to her the whole time, but there's a huge twist at the end of this, and that's what bugged me so much. They were holding on to this huge twist. You know, at the end of a production, when they get new information, it completely changes everything you've just seen. That's what I'm just telling you. That's what happens in this, and I think you have a right to know, because the last 45 seconds of this documentary changes everything. So I was kind of pissed, but really intrigued. So there's going to be more. There's going to be more follow-ups on this, and I do recommend you catch up ASAP. I then watched The Curse, which I know a lot of you have seen. This is oh my gosh, it's a Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone and Ben Safdie collab. Well, Emma Stone didn't write it, but they wrote this strange story about Emma Stone's character and Nathan's character, who are a couple, and she's a very big influencer, and they're making almost like these earth houses. She's very eco-friendly, and they're doing this whole thing, and they're trying to change. It's a very complicated story, to be fair, but basically they're trying to do a reality TV show documenting them changing this neighborhood, and it's all about the ironies of them being there, and then it turns into something else completely, and it's just a wacky genre-bending ride. If you like really dry humor, and it's meant to be comedy that has something to say, it really does. This is a look on society and where we're going and why it's terrifying. And it's just a fun ride. It's just a fun, weird thinker. I highly recommend watching it if you like dry stuff and you can take some ambiguity, because you're not going to have all the answers you want. This is not a neat show by any means. It is a little bit of cringe content, purposefully cringe. So if you can't handle that, this is not for you. But if you're going to watch it now before the ending is spoiled for you, because it can be spoiled really easily. And you will not guess what's going to happen, but if someone shows you, you'll know. My camera died, but we are back. The one TV show that is a must watch for all true crime fans, it's a mini series, only 3 episodes long, is the new Netflix documentary, American Nightmare. I thought this was brilliant. Terrifying. The interviews are really well put together, but then also it's the 3 episodes, they make sense why there are 3, because it kind of brings the story together, and it's not something like that they could have put all together within one movie or one episode and they're really prolonging it. It was really purposefully done. It's very sincere and such a interesting story, and I just really loved the interviews and how it comes together, because I was not expecting any of it. It's about a couple that wake up in the middle of the night to intruders, and they take the woman, and about the whole town, what they think about this supposed kidnapping. It's a really interesting story, and if you're a true crime fan, get on it now and come thank me later. You will thank me later if you're a true crime fan. And I have one last thing to bring up. My favorite game of this month. I played a new game this month, which I try and do, but sometimes I end up playing Texas Chainsaw Massacre over and over and over on Twitch. If you don't know, I'm on Twitch and I stream 3 times a week minimum. And I played Limbo finally. I had played Inside before, which I absolutely loved, and Limbo is basically the story before that, and same creators, looks very similar. Same game, just a little bit more simple. It's the story of this kind of ghost boy, and you have to move him through different puzzles, and it's just this creepy, haunting atmosphere, really cool sound effects, and very scary, but also cute and whimsical at the same time. So I really enjoyed playing that, and thank you to everyone who stopped by when I was playing it. I also have, if you want to watch my full VOD run-throughs, I do have a gaming channel which I am thinking, I would love to hear your feedback on this. I'm thinking about changing that into a other spooky stuff channel where I have my VODs, so my full gaming clips, and then other little pieces like vlogs and stuff that are extra that don't really fit on this channel to go there. So let me know your thoughts on that, but it's linked down below and I'll link it here. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. My what's coming up on VOD will be up in a couple of days. But until then, why not check out my unpopular opinions? Don't tell anyone. These are the films I like that everyone hates right here. I'll see you guys soon. Stay spooky. Bye, friends.